There's something nobody tells you about personal growth, something that hits you like a cold wind on a day you thought would be warm. You start reading books that change how you see the world. You begin questioning things you always accepted without thought. You develop new interests, new perspectives, new ways of understanding yourself and others. And you think this is purely positive, this evolution, this expansion of who you are. You think the people in your life will celebrate this growth, will be happy for you, will want to grow alongside you. But then something strange starts happening. The friends you've had for years suddenly seem distant. The conversations that used to flow easily now feel forced, shallow, like you're both speaking different languages even though you're using the same words. Your family looks at you with confusion, sometimes concern, sometimes something that looks almost like betrayal. And you can't quite understand what's happening because you haven't done anything wrong. You haven't hurt anyone. You've just changed. You've just grown. You've just become more of who you were always meant to be. But here's the uncomfortable truth that Alfred Adler understood deeply, the truth that nobody wants to acknowledge because it's painful and complicated and doesn't fit into our neat stories about relationships. When you truly grow, when you have the courage to evolve beyond the version of yourself that others found comfortable, your relationships will be tested. And many of them, perhaps most of them, won't survive. Not because you're abandoning people, not because you've become arrogant or superior, but because the dynamics that held those relationships together were based on who you used to be, not who you're becoming. And the people who knew that old version of you, they have an investment in keeping you there, in that familiar shape they recognize, even if that shape no longer fits who you actually are. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life, because I know you've felt it. You're at a gathering with friends you've known since college, people you used to spend every weekend with, people who know all your old stories and inside jokes. And someone brings up a topic, maybe politics or relationships or how to live a meaningful life, and you share something you've been thinking about, something that reflects your growth, your new understanding. And you see it in their eyes. That flicker of something uncomfortable. That subtle pulling back. And then someone makes a joke, something dismissive, something that's meant to put you back in your place. Oh, listen to the philosopher over here, they say, laughing in that way that's supposed to be friendly but carries an edge of mockery. When did you get so serious? You used to be fun. And you laugh along because that's what you're supposed to do, but something inside you registers the message. You're changing in ways that make them uncomfortable. You're outgrowing the box they built for you. And instead of celebrating your expansion, they're trying to shrink you back down to a size they recognize, a size that doesn't threaten the stability of their own worldview. This is what Adler would call a clash of lifestyles, a fundamental incompatibility between your direction of growth and their need for things to stay the same. And it's not necessarily malicious. Most of the time, people don't even realize they're doing it. They just feel unsettled by your changes, threatened somehow, and they instinctively try to pull you back to equilibrium, back to the version of you that felt safe and predictable. Here's what Adler understood about human relationships that most people miss. We don't connect with each other in a vacuum. Every relationship has a purpose, a function, a role that each person plays. And we unconsciously choose relationships that support our lifestyle, our way of moving through the world, our strategies for feeling significant and secure. Think about your old friend group, the people you spent time with before you started this journey of growth. What purpose did those relationships serve? Maybe they were people who validated your complaints, who agreed with you about how unfair the world is, who made you feel better about staying stuck because they were stuck too. Maybe they were people who kept things light and superficial, who never asked difficult questions, who helped you avoid looking too deeply at your own life. Maybe they were people who admired the old you, who thought you were funny or cool or impressive in ways that required you to stay exactly as you were. None of this is necessarily bad. These relationships probably served an important purpose at that time in your life. But here's what happens when you start to grow. Your lifestyle begins to shift. Your goals change. Your values deepen. The strategies you used to feel significant start to seem hollow. And suddenly, those relationships that used to feel nourishing start to feel constricting. The friend who always validated your complaints now seems to be enabling your victim mentality. The group that kept things light now feels unbearably superficial. The people who admired the old you now seem threatened by the new you. And you're caught in this painful place where you can feel the relationship dying, but you're not sure if it's your fault, if you're doing something wrong, if you should try harder to maintain the connection. And now I want to ask you a question, and I need you to be completely honest with me, because this answer is just for you. How many relationships in your life right now feel like they're held together by nothing but history? How many people are you still connected to, not because of who you both are now, but because of who you used to be, because of shared memories that feel increasingly irrelevant to your current life? Let me tell you something that maybe no one has ever told you. That discomfort you feel, that sense that you're outgrowing people, that guilt that comes with realizing you don't actually enjoy spending time with people you've known for years, it's not wrong. You are not betraying anyone by changing. You are not being disloyal by evolving beyond the version of yourself that others found convenient. And I know it feels terrible. I know you've probably lost sleep over this, wondering if you're becoming a bad person, wondering if your growth is making you cold or judgmental or elitist. But what if I told you that this discomfort, this painful shedding of relationships that no longer fit, is actually a sign that you're doing something profoundly right? So I want to ask you something. If what I'm saying resonates deep within your being, if you feel seen in this struggle, go down to the comments right now and simply write this: I'm growing through it. Just those 4 words. I'm growing through it. Because when you write that, when you put those words down there, you are not only helping me understand that this content is reaching those who need it. You are creating a meeting point for all those people who, like you, are navigating this painful but necessary transition. Imagine for a second that someone else, someone who is losing friends because they're finding themselves, reads your comment tomorrow and feels that deep relief of knowing they are not alone. That their loneliness is not a punishment but a passage. That there is an entire community of people walking this same difficult path. Your comment can be that validation for someone who is about to give up on their growth just to keep people comfortable. So write in the comments, I'm growing through it. And if you want to share more, if you feel the need to tell your story, this is your safe space. Here, no one will judge you for outgrowing relationships that kept you small. Now let's talk about what Adler would say is really happening here, because it's more complex than simply outgrowing people. Adler believed that every individual organizes their life around what he called a fictional goal, an imagined endpoint that gives direction and meaning to all their striving. And here's the crucial part. Your fictional goal determines not just what you pursue, but who you connect with. If your fictional goal is to be seen as successful in conventional terms, you'll surround yourself with people who validate that pursuit, who measure success the same way you do, who compete with you or admire you based on those external markers. If your fictional goal is to be liked and accepted above all else, you'll attach yourself to people who are easy to please, who don't challenge you, who let you remain comfortable in your people-pleasing patterns. But when you start to grow, when you do the difficult work of examining your life and questioning your assumptions and developing your own values, something fundamental shifts. Your fictional goal changes. Maybe you stop caring so much about being seen as successful and start caring more about being authentic. Maybe you stop organizing your life around being liked and start organizing it around being true to yourself. Maybe you shift from seeking external validation to cultivating internal wisdom. And when your fictional goal changes, when your direction shifts, you suddenly find yourself out of alignment with people whose goals haven't changed, who are still moving in the direction you've left behind. It's not that they're bad people or that you're better than them. It's that you're literally heading in different directions now, and trying to maintain close connection with people who are going the opposite way is exhausting and ultimately impossible. Think about it like this. Imagine you're hiking with a group of friends, and you've all been walking the same path for years. The trail is familiar. Everyone knows where it goes. There's comfort in the shared direction, in the predictability of walking together. But then you start to notice something. This path isn't actually taking you where you want to go. It's leading to a destination that used to excite you but now feels hollow, meaningless, like someone else's dream that you mistook for your own. So you stop, and you look around. And you see another trail, less traveled, steeper, more difficult, but leading somewhere that resonates with something deep inside you. And you make the difficult decision to leave the main path, to take the road less traveled. At first, your friends might not even notice. You're just a little behind, a little off to the side. But as you keep walking your new path, as the distance grows, they start to realize you're not following anymore. And here's what happens. Some of them will call out to you. Where are you going? Come back. You're going the wrong way. They're genuinely concerned, genuinely confused, because from their perspective, you are going the wrong way. You're deviating from the known path, the safe path, the path everyone agreed upon. And when you try to explain that you found a different way, that you need to go in this new direction, they don't understand. How could they? They're still committed to the original destination. Your new path looks like madness, like arrogance, like you think you're too good for the journey everyone else is on. And this is the loneliness of growth. Not the loneliness of being abandoned, but the loneliness of being the one who leaves, who chooses a different way, knowing that most people won't follow and many will judge you for going. Adler talked about something he called the courage to be imperfect, but really it's about something larger. It's about the courage to disappoint people, to let go of their expectations, to allow them to think badly of you if that's what your authentic growth requires. And this is where most people get stuck. They start to grow, they start to see the truth about their lives and relationships, but they can't follow through because they can't bear the thought of disappointing others, of being misunderstood, of being seen as the bad guy who abandoned their friends or changed too much or got too big for their britches. So they compromise. They try to maintain relationships that are clearly dying. They force themselves to attend gatherings that drain them. They participate in conversations that feel increasingly meaningless. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They pretend to care about topics that bore them. They hide their growth, downplay their insights, make themselves smaller so that others can remain comfortable. And you know what happens? They start to resent the very people they're trying to please. They develop what Adler would call a neurotic lifestyle, a way of living that's fundamentally dishonest, that requires them to betray themselves in order to maintain external harmony. And the tragic irony is that this compromise doesn't even work. The relationships still die, just more slowly, more painfully. Because you can't hide fundamental growth. It leaks out. People sense it even when you're trying to conceal it. They feel the distance even when you're pretending proximity. And eventually, the gap between who you've become and who you're pretending to be grows so large that something has to give. Here's what I've observed in people who have the courage to let their superficial relationships die. And I mean truly let them die, not with drama or declarations or burning bridges, but with the quiet acceptance that some connections have run their natural course. They go through a period of intense loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being between worlds. They've left behind the relationships that no longer fit, but they haven't yet found the new connections that align with who they're becoming. And this period is brutally difficult. It feels like you've made a terrible mistake. It feels like you've sacrificed everything important for some vague notion of growth that maybe wasn't worth it. You see old friends posting pictures together on social media, and you feel that stab of exclusion, that question of whether you were wrong to distance yourself. You have a difficult day, and you realize you don't have anyone to call who would really understand what you're going through. You achieve something meaningful, and there's no one to celebrate with who gets why it matters. This is the valley, the low point, the place where most people turn back. They decide growth isn't worth the cost. They crawl back to their old relationships, apologizing for changing, promising to be more like they used to be. And maybe they're welcomed back, and maybe things return to something approximating normal. But something has been lost. They've learned that they can't be themselves and keep these people. They've learned that love and acceptance, at least in these relationships, is conditional on staying the same. And that knowledge, that internalized message, it does something to a person's soul. But here's what happens if you don't turn back, if you keep walking through the valley, if you have the courage to endure the loneliness without retreating into old patterns. You start to discover something remarkable. You start meeting new people, but not just any people. You start connecting with individuals who are on similar paths of growth, who understand the journey you're on because they're on it too. And these new relationships, they're different. They're not based on shared history or proximity or habit. They're based on shared values, on mutual respect for each other's growth, on a fundamental compatibility of direction. You can talk about things that matter. You can share your insights without being mocked or dismissed. You can be excited about your evolution without having to minimize it to make others comfortable. And you realize that what you thought was the normal standard for relationships, that surface-level connection punctuated by occasional depth, was actually a pale imitation of what's possible when you connect with people who truly see you. This is what Adler meant by social interest developing at higher levels. It's not that you become less social or less connected. It's that your connections become more genuine, more meaningful, more aligned with who you actually are. The circle gets smaller, but the depth increases exponentially. And you realize that you don't actually need dozens of friends. You need a few people who really get it, who see you clearly and love what they see, who challenge you to grow rather than pressure you to stay the same. Now let me address something that might be bothering you, a question that probably lurks in the back of your mind when you think about all of this. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm not actually growing? What if I'm just becoming judgmental, elitist, disconnected? What if my old friends are right and I've changed in negative ways? This is a crucial question, and it's one that Adler would say you should take seriously. Because there is a danger in growth, or rather, in what masquerades as growth. Some people don't actually evolve. They just develop what Adler called a superiority complex. They start reading a few books, learning a few concepts, and suddenly they think they're above everyone else. They look down on their old friends not with sadness but with contempt. They use their newfound knowledge as a weapon to feel superior rather than as a tool for genuine understanding. They mistake intellectual accumulation for actual wisdom. They confuse changing their opinions for changing their character. And if you're doing this, if your growth is really just a sophisticated form of ego inflation, then yes, losing relationships is a sign that something's wrong. But here's how you can tell.